Here have probably heard of the 10,000 hours rule. Maybe you even model your own life after it. Basically, it's the idea that to become great in anything takes 10,000 hours of focused practice, so you'd better get started as early as possible. The poster child for this story is Tiger Woods. His father famously gave him a putter when he was 7 months old. At 10 months, he started imitating his father's swing. At 2, you can go on YouTube and see him on national television. Fast forward to the age of 21, he's the greatest golfer in the world. It's quintessential 10,000 hours story. Another that features in a number of best-selling books is that of the 3 Polgar sisters, whose father decided to teach them chess in a very technical manner from a very early age, and really he wanted to show that with a head start and focused practice, any child could become a genius in anything. And in fact, 2 of his daughters went on to become grandmaster chess players. So, when I became the science writer at Sports Illustrated magazine, I got curious. If this 10,000 hours rule is correct, then we should see that elite athletes get a head start in so-called deliberate practice. This is coached, error correction-focused practice, not just playing around. And in fact, when scientists study elite athletes, they see that they spend more time in deliberate practice, not a big surprise. But when they actually track athletes over the course of their development, the pattern looks like this. The future elites actually spend less time early on in deliberate practice in their eventual sport. They tend to have what scientists call a sampling period, where they try a variety of physical activities, they gain broad general skills, they learn about their interests and abilities, and delay specializing until later than peers who plateau at lower levels. And so when I saw that, I said, gosh, that doesn't really comport with the 10,000 hours rule, does it? So I started to wonder about other domains that we associate with obligatory early specialization, like music. Turns out the pattern's often similar. This is research from a world-class music academy, and what I want to draw your attention to is this. The exceptional musicians didn't start spending more time in deliberate practice than the average musicians until their 3rd instrument. They too tended to have a sampling period. Even musicians we think of as famously precocious, like Yo-Yo Ma, he had a sampling period. He just went through it more rapidly than most musicians do. So having seen this sort of surprising pattern in sports and music, I started to wonder about domains that affect even more people, like education. An economist found a natural experiment in the higher ed systems of England and Scotland. In the period he studied, the systems were very similar, except in England, students had to specialize in their mid-teen years to pick a specific course of study to apply to, whereas in Scotland, they could keep trying things in university if they wanted to. And his question was, who wins the trade-off, the early or the late specializers? And what he saw was that the early specializers jump out to an income lead because they have more domain-specific skills. The late specializers get to try more different things, and when they do pick, they have better fit, or what economists call match quality. And so their growth rates are faster. By 6 years out, they erase that income gap. Meanwhile, the early specializers start quitting their career tracks in much higher numbers, essentially because they were made to choose so early that they more often made poor choices. So the late specializers lose in the short term and win in the long run. And I think if we thought about career choice like dating, we might not pressure people to settle down quite so quickly. So this got me interested, seeing this pattern again, in exploring the developmental backgrounds of people whose work I had long admired. Like Duke Ellington, who shunned music lessons as a kid to focus on baseball and painting and drawing. Or Maryam Mirzakhani, who wasn't interested in math as a girl, dreamed of becoming a novelist, and went on to become the first and so far only woman to win the Fields Medal, the most prestigious prize in the world in math. Or Vincent van Gogh had 5 different careers, each of which he deemed his true calling, before flaming out spectacularly, and in his late 20s picked up a book called The Guide to the ABCs of Drawing. That worked out okay. Golf is the epitome of what the psychologist Robin Hogarth called a kind learning environment. Kind learning environments have next steps and goals that are clear, rules that are clear and never change. When you do something, you get feedback that is quick and accurate. Work next year will look like work last year. Chess, also a kind learning environment. The grandmaster's advantage is largely based on knowledge of recurring patterns, which is also why it's so easy to automate. On the other end of the spectrum are wicked learning environments, where next steps and goals may not be clear. Rules may change. You may or may not get feedback when you do something. It may be delayed, it may be inaccurate, and work next year may not look like work last year. So which one of these sounds like the world we're increasingly living in? The worst forecasters were the most specialized experts, those who'd spent their entire careers studying 1 or 2 problems and came to see the whole world through one lens or mental model. Best forecasters were simply bright people with wide-ranging interests. For a healthy ecosystem, we need both birds and frogs. Frogs are down in the mud seeing all the granular details. The birds are soaring up above, not seeing those details, but integrating the knowledge of the frogs. And we need both. The problem, Dyson said, is that we're telling everyone to become frogs. And I think, in a wicked world, that's increasingly short-sighted.